Today is January 16th, 2022. Welcome to Native Calgarian. Oki, Naganago, Mekoche, Chestokom Aki. Hi, my name is Red Thunder Woman. My English name is Michelle Robinson. I use she and her pronouns. Native Calgarian is being recorded on the lands of the Niitsitapi, which is the Blackfoot Confederacy. The Blackfoot south of the imposed US-Canadian border are the Blackfeet, and north of the border are the Siksika, Gunai, and Bagani of the Confederacy. These lands are Treaty 7, signed September 22nd, 1877, with signatures that include the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Wesley, Chiniki, and Bearspaw Nations of the Stoney, and the Dene from Tsuut'ina. I acknowledge all First Nation, Métis, Inuit, status and non-status across Turtle Island as the keepers of these lands. All non-Indigenous are treaty partners with the government signing on your behalf. I honor the Blackfoot as the elders and members have been so kind to me on my Red Road journey. Elder Red Crane taught me how to pronounce my spirit name. I was born in Calgary, or a Blackfoot Mokinstis, as Michelle Elliott, an English name, which has afforded me privilege in an English colonial world. My mother is Northern Slavey Dene, or Satu Dene, but my Indian Act imposed status card by the Canadian government says Yellowknives Dene. My father is so Canadian. I'm a daughter of the Mayflower and a daughter of the American Revolution, while having an Indian Act imposed status card. My Dene lineage roots me in the land of the Hare people, also called the Great Bear Lake people in Treaty 11. I'm a native to Turtle Island, and my Dene nation is a visitor to this area of Pincho Tine Indahe in Satu Dene, meaning many horse town, named after the Calgary Stampede. Land acknowledgements are critical for creating a safer space for Indigenous, as well as honoring the host as a guest and honoring your role as a treaty partner. And those who listen to me know that this is a little outside of what I talk about, but I just learned, thanks to Twitter this week, that Calgary in sign language is two guns pointing out for Cowtown as well. So I think that's hysterical and should be a part of our welcome signs. My humblest apologies to Blackfoot elders and language keepers as I try to learn proper pronunciation. Any mistakes or misinterpretations will be on me. I encourage questions so that misunderstandings can be cleared up as soon as possible. I do not speak on behalf of all Indigenous. I just share what I know as I walk my red road. My Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. Thank you to previous donors for showing your support. If you value listening or watching and can afford to give, thank you. For those who cannot afford to give, I'd just love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, where you can send in your comments or your questions. Also, giving a review helps, whichever medium you're listening from. I have a YouTube channel where you can go and subscribe. You can go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest podcasts and pin posts on social media. And with that, I want to introduce my friend, James. James, would you like to introduce yourself in your way?
Chimiquech, Wina Bojo, Minade Wasmon Nishn Cots, Skigmang Nishna back, what is Donjba, and Gigdom, Chimiquech the Quangan, and Stuya and Stwigan and Skish Tandayan. My Ojibwe name, Minade Wasmon, means kind lightning or gentle lightning, and I'm from Curve Lake First Nation. I currently live in the lands of the Lekwungen people, call this place home, their territory home, visitor to these territories. And the Lekwungen people, which is the song using the Esquimalt people, and called Saanich home here on the island in Victoria, BC. What the people out here, I believe, is called Matula. That's what they refer to South Island as, this area of Victoria.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, it's one of my favorite places on earth, actually. Some of my best memories. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it here too. I think of the wedding like almost daily, so it's like I remember everybody and everything. So glad you came.
I was so honored to be there, my whole family, and it was such a beautiful ceremony. And what's funny? I've now that we've gone to Royal Roads for the wedding, I see pieces of it in movies now. So like Ryan Reynolds and Deadpool, like I seen it. Yeah. It's there.
Like, oh, we were there.
That's where James was. That's where Becky was. Anyway, so yeah, it's such a beautiful place, and and then here I am in Calgary, the land of the Chinooks. It's such a beautiful place. So, but I would say Victoria is one of the most beautiful places on earth. I've been there, Gibson's Landing, Nanaimo. I've actually been to the tip to go whale watching too. of Vancouver Island. But I spent a lot of years in Comox because they have a Sea Cadet camp there. And we would go out to Victoria every summer as well and do the ceremony of the flags. So it's just, I have so many wonderful memories of that area. And it's one of the most special places on earth, I think. And actually, it is number 2 for scuba diving, the West Coast. Yep.
Beautiful.
So yeah, so much to talk about. You had a heck of a week, my friend.
Yeah, well, it's been a heck of a time for a while, you know. But yeah, it was a big week. It's pandemic. Everyone's kind of going through everything, and all of us together, in this kind of mass trauma that we're all dealing with. But yeah, it's a bit of all days on the 10th, and I had no idea. I wasn't aware. I was getting text messages, and Instagram, or not Instagram messages, like messenger messages, and just I didn't even. And I got an email from work, and I didn't realize. But yeah, it was a bit of a thing.
Yeah.
And I waited till the next day to really get a grip on what was happening, and talk to my partner, who is we talk about everything. We don't hold anything back from each other.
Yeah.
And I didn't know someone was going to be putting me on Twitter. I didn't know I was going to, or blow up or go viral out here on the Twitter. And I stand by every word I said. Maybe I didn't say it the right way. There's a lot of F-bombs and BS's and F'ers and all these other things.
I swear on my podcast. So.
Oh yeah, and I realized that, and
yeah.
But it's time too that I start being that person that people look up to in situations. Be that elder that's, and I've never ever wanted to. I'm not about titles. I'm not about being in a pedestal, but seeing how much how that worked out that way was really sobering, but yeah, I said some words.
Yeah, I actually thought they were powerful. I don't judge based on swearing. I used to, but I don't anymore, because I think now I understand, our voices have been silenced for so long and suppressed for so long. We have every right to be angry and upset at times. And especially when a settler rubs us wrong and says things like, "Oh, I'm doing this for you."
And that was the thing. I think that whole, because I was called into work, and that next morning I went out and I'd smudged. Like I said, I didn't understand to the point that it got to. And I didn't even know that there was support behind the words that I was saying or I'd said. And it was I didn't take the bus to work. I ended up walking from where I smudged in the morning by the creek. I ended up walking up to work, and going over my head is, how am I going to tell my wife I lost my job? How am I going to tell Becky that I really messed up and I lost my job? Was my thought. Again, when we say our words and are not, there were so many things that I was afraid of, but knew I had, there was a good chance that this was all coming crashing to an end. And to get to work and be supported. They said they'd stand behind me, support me with my message. Delivery wasn't so good on their part, but only because of the position and the thing that I do, and so that was grateful. And I actually they asked if I wanted to see it. And I said, okay, because my police officer friend, my friend that worked at Sandwich, says, hey, bro, here's a link. And he sent it to me. And then the same with the city councilor. I said, hey, here's a link. And both of them said the same thing. Is just to let you know, we support everything you said, and we wish more people would stand up and say the words. But, you got to work on your delivery. And it goes back to Mark and I, when we were first starting to hang out, and he's like, bro, he's like, I love you. He's like, I really do. He says, and people, but you have to work on your delivery, because people either love you or they hate you. That's just, there's no, you just put it out there. He said, know what you're saying is the truth. And so I just got to speak our truth or my truth or whatever they say nowadays. When it comes to our people, even in the education system, it's not once that I've not said my words. Just when you say them nicely, nobody hears anything. No one, and even in my meeting at work, and I said, well, they should have known, these protocols and things, and the way we are, or the way, the words I'm saying. They were like, oh, because that's the word you put out to the universe. I'm like, no, it's the workshop I put on for them in 2017, 2018. All those ones that were in that workshop that was done through, I think it's called Dogwood, were all different, to my knowledge. We're all different activists with all these groups taking part to come and hear this cultural way of, if you're going to be doing what you're doing. And only to hear that everyone's been saying these words for years and they're not listening and they don't care.
James, I'm really upset to hear that, because I was mad watching the video knowing they didn't actually know who you were, and now to find out you had even engaged with them, and then still not know who you are. Like, I wish I could tell you, like, it shows me the tokenism. It shows me the lack of it. Like, how many Indigenous hires, and they can't remember our names if we have more than one. Like, it shows the lack of understanding, their racism, their anti-Indigenous bias being like thrown out there. I have a really great video from City TV News that did this. Like, I just talked about anti-Indigenous bias. And it's right back to your point that they don't hear what you're saying, and they don't remember your name, and they don't remember your nation. Like, but I can recall the chief of police, his name, his first name, his last name, and the prime minister's first name and last name, their title, their rank, and they can't remember this of you. That just shows anti-Indigenous bias.
Oh no, absolutely. And in fact, like I know that so many people say they're unemployable or they're uneducated. Now we fought against us. No, don't say that about people. But when you can't read a hoodie in a bright red that's got bright red and white lettering on it that says my nation, and I'm standing right in front of you, and to spin it to their beliefs or their ways is just so maddening. And when I didn't see those things until afterwards, they say, oh, he walked up and claimed to be from Pochadot. I would never. And as people know me, no, I wouldn't do that.
You would never do that. Yeah.
And to then see my place of employment, when they said that there was so much support from the words that I said, like that was, I don't know if they put it up, those people had put it up there to try and make me look bad, because I was angry and I was fed up, and it was just like, we got put off the bus, and on the way off the bus, someone saying something about natives, because there was some there with their hand drums, and we got diverted from the bus. And it's just like, where do you start arguing? Where do you start? And I don't, I to always, turn the cheek 99.9% of the time. And when I talked to my partner about this, I was like, even when I talked to everyone about this, but it was that very corner of Burnside and Douglas, not even 2 months ago. I'm on my way to work. I have my backpacks. I have 2 backpacks that I carry, one with my bundle, one with my lunch and other stuff, and my drum bag. And I put that over top. So I have a lot of things on me. And I'm walking. And it's happened like a couple times this year, but that time, like the last time, it was just, somewhere just before Christmas, just before break. And someone yelled at me, get a job, get an effing job. And I'm like, okay. And and they were saying, like, I have my earphones on, so, I'm seeing this. I don't know what they're saying. So I pulled it out, and that's what they get. And I'm like, put my earphone back on, whatever, go to work.
Sure.
And so I don't know if that part played in it as well. It's like, they don't deal with that. White settler people that don't do anything, and I'm sorry, that's not doing anything. Doesn't experience the racism that comes from that. Or when they pulled down the statue out in front of the legislature, and the local nation said, we didn't ask you to be here. This isn't, we didn't condone what's going on here. And at that very point, I'm like, they still don't listen. Becky and I, for 6 hours, stood in front of these activists and said, you need to talk to local people. You want to help, go to the nation, sit with the nation. You need to bring oranges to the nation. You need to bring these other things, and know that they're not going to accept you right away. And it's going to suck. But if you really want to do, this is what you have to do. But for them, as pointing out that, he said, another person, people don't care if we're from Cowichan tribe. People don't look, or if you're from Anishinaabe, if you're Anishinaabe or Cree or Dene or anything. They just see Indian. And It goes back to that systemic racial stuff that we face. Get a job. I was even, when I was working with the school district, when I was working with School District 61, you can keep that in there. On my way to work one day, someone called me a wagon burner on the bus, on the BC Transit bus, a wagon burner, openly. And I just turned, and I know I heard it in a movie, or someone's like, well, you keep building them, and I'm going to keep burning them, or we're going to keep burning them. And his friends started laughing, like people didn't start laughing at him, because all of a sudden I turned the situation into something else and just walked away. It's like, whatever. And in that ugliness of Victoria, 2 weeks later, or 3, or a little bit later on, not sure exactly when, but the friend that was there that I didn't even really know, he's like, dude, he's like, my friend didn't say anything that day. He's like, I'm sorry. He said, but that was a brilliant, like, he didn't know what to do. We didn't know what to do. And I was like, well, what do you say? Okay, thank you. You're welcome, whatever, right? But it's like that whole, we're accepting some kind of responsibility for it, and even experiencing it one day when I'm at 7-Eleven, and this dude freaks on me because he thinks I want to have his bank card number, and it was my payday. like what's, and then at Save On, and I didn't even recognize, because he had this crazy motorcycle helmet on. But then later, to have this dude come say, hey, you know what, I'm really sorry, that was a really bad moment that I had. I didn't mean these things. I was, this, and I'm like, who are you? Like, and then all of a sudden he's like, oh, I was this guy at that situation. And I was like, oh, yeah, it didn't, yeah. Because if I was to let everything affect me like this, I would be that angry guy that showed up there. And that isn't me. The words, yes. The frustration, absolutely. And I hope that they hear the words, because it's, and when I talked about our people, I'm including the Pachida people, but I'm including everyone, because the ones that are here, that are in the cities, the Métis people, the Cree people, the Blackfoot people, the Mohawk people, the ones that I've met here, we're the ones that still go through this racism, that they don't even realize. And I'm not saying that it's the only thing that does, it's that one drop of everything else that compounds on the stuff that we have to live through every day.
Actually, just to be honest, like the microaggressions every day, I talk about it, and I don't think people understand the gravity of it. Like the amount of microaggressions I hear at work, and or on my way to work, my way home, it's awful, and they don't get it, they don't see it, they don't care. And honestly, the fact that you had anybody come up and apologize to you one time, I mean,
I know.
That's great. That's way more than I've ever experienced. At the end of this show, every show we do cultural safety, and it talks about, if you're a bystander, what to do in these situations. And it is clear people are not doing it. like, I understand sometimes there's a safety issue to not intervene, but there's still other things you can do. And, you know, they just don't want to do. They don't want to learn your name. They don't want to learn your nation. And they certainly don't want to learn how to properly deal with any of that. And they certainly don't understand intergenerational trauma. They haven't taken anti-racism training, and they clearly don't care about actually dealing with the cultural sensitivity of the issue. And I feel like some days that's why we're so far apart as Indigenous to Canadians. It's really, really challenging.
Mm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and I'm grateful that my family don't experience it as much as I do. You know, with the brown skin. You know, my wife's light skinned, and my kids are light skinned as well. And it's not that she hasn't, because she did one time over at our mall that we go to all the time, and when it hit her, she's like, "Oh my God!" But she never sits in those places. Thank goodness, and she never allows me to sit in those places either. You know, that beautiful, positive love that she has, that she walks around with all the time, that just kind of radiates out, and understand why when things like that happen, it affects her in a negative way.
Yeah, I know. She's a gem, frankly. And you know, I know for Darcy, or my husband, he's been hearing these microaggressions his entire life. Sometimes by, you know, friends, family, mine, his, others. It's constant, and it's been decades of it, right? Because we've been together now for decades, and we're almost going on 30 years. Jeez. So I it's hard when it's the family. I have a hard time watching, like I at work, there's a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment said to my coworkers on a regular basis, and it by people all the time. And everyone there has a really good, you know, they say don't bring it home. But I mean, it's hard watching your coworkers go through it. So I imagine having our families watch us go through it has been really challenging. And but of course, it's fucking harder living it. Like, holy.
I know, right? And even in I'm very blessed to have the kind of support I have with the work that I'm in, from the place that I'm at right now, on many levels. Like, and when they first heard, because you know me coming in, what I experienced on my way to work, they're like, "Okay, well, we have a bunch of people live down there. We're going to start picking you up, and we're going to drive you up here, and you know, you're not going to have to worry about having to deal with that stuff anymore." Because that's what they felt they could be able to do. That whole, like, we're going to help you. And some of the days I'm like, "Hey, you know, can you pick me up and run me up to the school?" When I can walk up, I still do, because this is hard. But those future generations aren't going to be doing what's going on now, and that's where I'm at. You know, like, I have mad respect for so many of those leaders out there that are fighting this system that won't change. But I've got 35,000 people that I've talked to that in a generation or two, this is going to change. They're not going to be doing this stuff anymore. They will do what's right, because they all say it's just something they feel better inside, which is what our teachings and everything is meant to do for us. So,
You know, just to give that little bit of hope, I remember it was Halloween, and my daughter, she was meeting a new group of people, and it was wonderful. Just organically, all of these youth ask, well, "What are your pronouns? What are your boundaries?" And they were going to watch scary movies, but they wanted to make sure they didn't cross a boundary first. And I thought, this is the next generation. Now I think our circles are maybe a little different than outside our circles. So, but I mean, that's I guess, bring it back to our circle, how much healing we've had to work on and do as a community. And this is what our youth are saying to each other,
and I love it.
right?
And there's so many of them that are doing it. You know, there's healing to do, but there's so many. Our futures, we just got to hold the line.
Yeah. So I don't know. at least that's somewhat hopeful and helpful. And especially it makes us know that our work matters, because I know some days it doesn't feel like it. The days when they can't remember your name, can't remember your nation, and can't remember your contributions. And I know you and Becky, I mean, I just to give people background, you literally walked into our life. This was your second walk across Canada, and long before we were talking about truth and reconciliation, you were walking to release those spirits, those children that were still stuck in that place. And your leadership, you got to show my daughter, and it, to this day, she can talk about that day we were at St. Paul's and St. Mary's before St. Mary's burned down, and it resonated with her. Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah.
You guys have all definitely been a serious gift to my life and in my life. I'm so grateful to have you as my sister and my brother and my family out there. It was so weird the last time you were in Calgary not being at the house. Like I was just saying, oh my God, it's so weird. But yeah, it'll be nice just to see you guys again.
Right. And we're not unpacked, but you're welcome here anytime. And I'm so excited to have you back. And we're going to work harder at, so since we've been home, every full moon, we have a fire. Tomorrow night is the fire. Tomorrow's Monday. Yeah, tomorrow we'll have another fire, sacred fire. And we open it up to community, because there's a lot of urban Indigenous that, believe in burning their hair, believe in burning certain items, and they don't have a place for it, but we're lucky enough to have that place. So those are things that we can do, we will do, should do, and it's good for our soul too. Biggest thing I've been learning is to try to let go of some of the traumas that we've all collectively had to deal with because of this stupid pandemic. So I don't know. I hope you know how positive of an influence you and Becky have been in our life. And even this incident, like, I just want to give you all of the accolades for saying exactly what I feel like I would have said at that time. And everybody would have said, oh, it's just another angry woman, but I don't care. You said exactly what they needed to hear, because I see them on Twitter. I have to block people every day on Twitter, social medias, because they just are here to gaslight. I had a white woman reporter talk about how, hey folks, just remember that every time they talk about these at-home kits, they're saying 10 million, but because there's 5 in each one, there's only 2 million kits. So she said, be careful of the language you're reading or hearing, because are they saying 2 million kits, or are they saying 10 million tests? Because there is a huge difference depending on whether or not, if we have over 4 million Albertans and there's only 2 million kids. Like, do you see the problem? Right. And these are conversations that she was trying to engage with. And right away, when I reposted that, there was a white man. Oh, well, is this really a thing? Can we really trust this? So I just point blank asked him, is it because you don't trust it being on a Native woman's site, or is it because you don't trust white women? What is it? And I didn't even mention she was a reporter. It was just the point that people go out of their way to gaslight. And it's like they think they're allies. They're following me to try to learn about natives, but they clearly don't listen to the podcast in any capacity, and they don't implement any of the cultural teachings that we give, including how to be a good ally, the bystander teachings. None of it. I mean, I've given them for almost 200 episodes now. It's not resonating with folks who are committed to misunderstanding us. Yeah.
Yeah, needing to be the ones to come in and save us, because obviously we don't know what we're talking about.
I give them the tools, and I tell them, you got the 1996 Royal Commission report, you have the TRC, like volumes of it, you have the inquiry, you have work to do. What does that mean to you? Like, I actually was going to go into counseling prior to what happened with Darcy losing his job, because I have so much anger and rage from the gaslighting from so-called allies who clearly didn't read the TRC. You can't read the smallest condensed piece of it without seeing that there are missing children and burial sites.
Mhm.
So their collective pearl clutching, I just want to punch people in the face, James. So I know I have to work on that. That is something I need to do for me. So counseling is something that I'm going to be focusing on. But I know this is nothing compared to what my mom went through, what my grandma went through, what my grandpa went through, what my great grandparents went through, my aunts, my uncles, even my cousin still goes through it. So frustrating. But all we can do is support each other, work with each other, and of course, our youth. I'm looking over at my daughter's door. Her happiness, her teaching, her understanding. I just feel like she's so much more further evolved than I am. So,
Mhm.
that gives me hope. That's for sure.
I know. And I love Sammy. I love, you know, I love our youth. I love that that it is getting, that it is going to be better because they know. And a lot of people didn't realize that after my walk in 2014 for the awareness of the babies that hadn't come home yet, as I had feared, walking for the survivors and the little ones and the family that never made it home. I visited, I don't know how many schools, like, starting in Mission, there was like so many of these residential schools, and then hearing so many of the ones that, had burned down and there's no records, there's none of these things, but this is where it was. And so there's still those babies, and those ones need to come home too, like they need to be found in those old sites. And so I'd felt honestly like a failure when I got in. I felt like, I didn't accomplish anything, except, there was a few of these lights and these spirits I felt I got home, but I just felt like I knew there were so many more and there was so much more to come out. So even though, babies were found last year, I'm so sad and happy at the same time, because, okay, now it's coming out in the work, and when I was approached by one of the media, like, why did you do this? I'm like, well, did you do it because you want to be famous on Twitter? I'm like, I don't want to be famous about anything. Like I've done things people, and it's just because because it just needs to happen,
Mhm. Well, honestly, James, September 30th, like every single Indigenous person should be going to a gravesite and
mm,
praying. And because of your leadership, every time I'm at one, I lay tobacco and I give that prayer, that idea, that intention of knowing you're here and that I still have work to do until every voice not just has been found and properly named, but is crossed over. That's a lot of um, responsibility that I think every one of us carries that we need to work on. And you taught me that. You taught Samantha that with your leadership. It's true.
which,
Mm.
which,
Mm. Yeah, is there anything else that you'd like to discuss today?
um, I don't know. Um, I think the big thing for me was just, putting it out there that, yeah, I won't say I'm from somewhere else because I usually I always just stand by the words. People see me on Facebook, or, you know, that's who you get in real life too. I might be a little bit nervous and shy at first, but once you see me, I'm crazier. I'm going to be an elder, but I might be one of those bad ones, just doesn't behave, kind of misbehaving. Um, Last year when we're at the last big conference or outing event that they've had here on the West Coast, the Gathering of Wisdom uh, Elders Conference, which was our Healers Conference. It was great to be asked by the chiefs and executive health directors that knew us, that knew Becky and I, that we did all this work. And I was excited and kind of shy and stuff. And this one young girl who was like these youth that were looking after us bringing us in, she just turned around, she says, "Grandpa, behave yourself." So I just sat there and that was it. I'm like, okay, all right.
That's so funny. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
You
Yeah,
can
I
see, like, there was a grandma that was sitting beside me, and I was because Becky and I, like, we're young, you know. My Becky, she owns that, and she is very, very much, that elder, perfect, beautiful person. And so when that grandma had said to me, she's like, "You need to sit here and receive this." She's like, "You don't realize you came into my community. You brushed my family. You brushed, we were going through this, and you and your wife were there." She's like, "Of course you're a grandpa. Just enjoy this." And she was a grandma, like she was a grandma. I was like,
yeah.
oh, but yeah,
Oh, that's cute. Yeah, no, I think it's great. I can't believe how loving and beautiful our people are across Turtle Island. The
I wanted to
Blackfoot.
pull my finger, kind of grandpa.
Oh my goodness, have you been watching that Reservation Dogs?
I haven't seen it yet. I totally want to hear it. I hear good things about it, but
It is great. And I think of back to the youth, like they have representation that we never had. I just shared this article and it was talking about Boba Fett and he was saying that when he was working with Jason Momoa, it was actually one of his very first roles that he did that inspired Jason Momoa. And I just think, these kids now, they have so many great, uncles, aunties, cousins that are on the big screen all the time. And I'm so happy for them. And that Reservation is Dog is it's such a great show. I was sad
mm,
it didn't win any. I think they're Emmys when they're TV shows, but anyway, they've won all the awards in my world.
oh no, I hear it. Yeah. And everyone says so much great things, but we're totally gonna watch it eventually.
Oh, it's so good. And I just
Um,
enjoyed it because I thought, my daughter can finally just kind of see herself a little more in this. And, it's such a different oh, there's two other ones that we had watched, and one of them was a casino one in the States. God, if I could remember it, Rutherford Falls.
oh,
That's
I heard, yes.
so funny. So, they have the dumb white guy who's like the town founder's great great grandson or something, and they're taking down the statues, and it's just comic. Like it's just so funny. And then
Okay.
there's Tall Boys. So that was Bruce Bruce McCormick. Oh shoot, I can't believe this trauma has made my brain just go foggy. Anyway,
I hear it.
um, Bruce McCullough, there we go. The
Okay.
Calgarian from Kids in the Hall.
Oh yes.
He made Tall Boys. And I mean, it's mainly racialized people, including a native. And like, it's just funny to watch us be who we
Mm,
are on screen. And there's one uncle on Reservation Dogs, so funny, but he talks like just brushes the conversation about MMIW. And
mm,
I know settlers don't care, but for me, what it did was it showed the pain without
mm,
having to everybody break down in tears and cry it out. Like it's the pain is so there, it's so raw and so emotional, and we keep it over here.
mhm.
And they showed that on the show like that. And that's the
Right.
stuff I want to see more of, because maybe more Canadians will get it. I don't know, but
That's
they
the thing. That's the thing is what I hope for, and I know that we've to have that young man that's missing out here, Bear Henry,
yeah,
Kevin, um, who had come to our I Don't Know More events when it was happening, and said he was very much inspired by the way we were doing things, and it's it hit home, and they could even with search and rescue out here. It's called search, like, oh well, we don't know where to go, and yet you look in the thing today. It's like, oh, there's this man that's missing from Vancouver Island, white fella. There's all these things, and this is what's going on. Everyone go look. Everyone go look. If search and rescue don't know where to go, aren't you supposed to go search?
right.
Isn't that part of searching is looking? Like,
I know their anti-indigenous bias is so strong. I think when
and
Colton went missing, it was the same time as that young boy and the grandparents went missing. And the
Mhm.
Calgary police went all the way to Mexico to try to investigate the possibility of finding these cows. But they wouldn't even publish about Colton. It's just black and white, night and day different. Um, you know, it's so hard because you see it all the time. And it you know, you talk about the trauma of just riding transit. Like there's a young two-spirit who is working on getting rehomed with their pupper, and I've been sharing that, hoping that people will donate. And I don't know. Anyway, you know, they were going to come pick me up at the bus or at the C train station, and I'm like, no, don't, just stay home, because the C train station that I get off and on is where the Calgary police murder our people, like it just all the time. We just did the 1 year anniversary of Sonny Crazy Bull. Is like he was in police custody for 90 minutes and then he's dead, and they still have no answers. So it's really hard. It's night and day different. How they report a settler missing or report a settler death compared to us. It's hard.
absolutely.
So I feel you, and I'm sad to hear this, that this is happening still, despite the inquiry, despite the TRC, despite the,
Mhm.
you know, all of the reports that we've given, all the so-called conversation on reconciliation. Jesus, I have this one police force, I won't name them right now. They've been over a year emailing me, we're going to take your land acknowledgement teaching, we're going to take it. They still haven't taken it. They still don't have land acknowledgement up. And that's nothing in the bigger picture of what they need to do and implement for their anti-racism training and calls to justice and calls to action. So, but just have to keep pushing them. And I mean, if that's my responsibility for the rest of my life, that's something I'll happily do. I can't believe we're here talking to each other, James, and that's kind of the gravity of why this podcast matters, is because our voices have been
Oh, absolutely.
silenced, I
And
should
even
say.
though, like, even
Yeah.
though that stuff out here on the island is the way it is, there is so much good things, you know, like you said, you know, I never even would ever expect anybody to come to apologize for being the way they were here. The other thing is knowing that there's so many police forces out there that treat us the way they do. Not that they're any means perfect out here, but I had the Saanich police officers, why I'm very connected to them, or why they respect me, is they came in a way when I was in ceremony, and so they sat and they listened. They listened to the hardness, they took in the goodness, and they came every time. I could go say I'm going to have fire right now at the ocean, and they would be there to bring wood, which is a big thing. And they would sit there and be ready. And I keep telling you guys, don't realize no one else is doing what you guys are trying to do right here. And this is encouraging. It's like that pebble we're throwing out, you know, that's going to ripple across here. I say, because not all of you are going to stay here in community policing. Someone's going to go sit with that red, and all of a sudden now you can't unlearn what you're learning right here. I said, those responsibilities that you want to take because you're sitting right here in this space. And when I had this young Native girl from back home, Anishinaabe from back home, Anishinaabe, Nadonish's daughter, when she saw the police officers coming, she started to get very angst. And I was like, it's okay. And she's like, no. So I'm like, they're okay. And she's like, do they have wood? I'm like, yeah, they're bringing wood for the sacred fire. And she was like, oh my God. And then it took her to a place of hope. You know, that it's not always going to be, we're not always going to be dragged down and shot and beat down. That there's hope. If they can do this, others can as well. You know, if
We have
they
a
can.
couple. We have a couple out here that are okay, like that are actually Native. So, you know, they're trying in their diversity team, but it's hard because, you know, so District 4 is where that C train is, and where I live is in District 4, and not all of them have. I'll never forget being mistreated by some of them, actually.
Oh no,
And,
absolutely.
yeah,
We got
and it's
an
hard. So, you know, like I
we
know
got an
what you're
uphill
saying.
battle.
Yeah.
it's not going to be easy. You know, they're not. It's just,
Yeah, it's a lot,
there's
but we're
generations
working
that
on
have
it.
come.
I wish settlers understood when they accuse us of not having jobs, that not only do we have to work, but we have to try to build these relationships with people who don't want to build them. And then we try to build relationships with people who do want to build them. And it's hard. And I mean, settlers aren't expected to go make friends with people they don't like, but we are expected to make friends with the very oppressors that have committed genocide on our people. And I just wanted to say that, because if there is a chance that any of those folks are watching this podcast from start to finish, I hope they understand the privilege that they come from, that they don't understand they have.
And that was the thing too. They got 35 seconds of that Twitter, but there was like 2 minutes of you know, kind of, you don't experience what we go through. You know, when I say you're sitting here and that young man's lost up there, you could be up there doing these things, but you don't, because you want to be here in front of a camera on a newspaper. You know, and that's not being an ally. You know, human lives are, and I said, human lives are worth more than a tree. You know, I was going to say infantry, but I thought, no, I better not. I already dropped way too many F's. So I was like, okay, call. And 2, I think if I would have thought of my family more and the position that I'm in and the things that I do, I maybe wouldn't have used so many F's. But it was it. There was just.
I don't know, James, I'll never be upset with you about that, because that bigger picture of, you know, they they don't understand the frustration. They don't put up with the daily microaggressions. They don't put up with having to heal from intergenerational hurt. You know, they don't understand. And they don't understand the microaggressions of just getting from point A to point B. And I just hope you know, from the deepest part of my soul, I believe 100% in every word you said, in every F-bomb, because I know we can never placate those two races. We can't. They will see us as angry, no matter how gently we say it. So I could never, you know, look down on the way you spoke to them, because I speak that way to some settlers and I don't worry about it. Now, maybe it's because I'm from Alberta. And in Alberta, we're, I don't know, so disrespectful. Like and when I say that, I mean, I remember in high school how we greeted each other was with F-bombs and middle fingers. And you know, and I see the younger generations like hug each other, high five, and say kind things to each other. I'm like, wow, that was not my friends group. You know, and these were white people that I was with, right? So I don't know. It's just that there's a sense of violence here in Alberta that I just think I would get away with it better because I'm in Alberta. Not that it makes it right.
No, I hear you. And it's like that everywhere. You know, walking across the country, I got to see the good and the bad, you know, and no one really got to hear about the bad, which was okay because that wasn't what I was going out there for. But it was like, yeah. Wow. This in a weird way too is kind of show me that there are good people out there. You know, again, you know, that some are ready, and with every settler that they call woke or wakes up or understands, it's like, okay, great, you know. And even in spaces when I'm saying my words and sharing teachings, it's like you start at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then it's like, you know, it's then my coworkers, and if I don't go out and get my lunch, I'm talking like 9.5 hours straight, and I get home like, holy, I just feel like wiped out, like just drained and
exhaustion. Well, and I hope the folks who took that video understand the gravity of the amount of pain and suffering it caused, not just you internally with the idea that you might lose your job, but that bigger picture of how it affects your community. And thank goodness
Mm.
your work was very supportive, and I'm really happy to hear that. So I just hope you know how much we love and support you, and do anything in our power for you every time.
Well, I thank you. You know, you guys kept us from starving on more than one occasion, and I can't even begin to repay you for those beautiful things. I just love you both and miss you all so much. Like, but yeah, we'll be able to travel again soon, and then be good. This
Right,
will be. This is the last. This is the last 16 or 18 months of this, and it will get better. You know,
right.
it will. I've been praying every day since prior to the pandemic. Yeah, which that was a whole craziness too. It was funny the day after that happened. Not the day after, but a while after that incident happened a while back with the whole hate stuff that went on at the mall from the taxi driver.
Mm,
The police called me that day when they said, or the district attorney had reached out and said, "Oh, we're not going to go forward with the charges and da da da." I thought, do I go off on this? And but I just like no, because that same day that person down east was let go from drunk driving. They killed one of our people. I'm like, it's just one of those days. You know, my trauma isn't any less than what's going on but down there, but this is one thing I can like, yeah, just breathe through it.
mm.
Breathe.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for all. This is why I don't understand how they don't know who you are.
Mm.
I mean, you've been in interviews, you've been in articles, you've been doing teachings. You are so well respected. All your work in I Don't Know More. One of my favorite moments ever was you with that sign behind Prince Charles.
That was epic. And that whole thing in Winnipeg that day, that was so,
So
yeah.
amazing.
I could have went to a sweat that day. They're like, "Hey, we got this big ceremony, but Prince Charles is down here and Harper's down there." Like, oh, let's go down there. And the grandmas, yeah, it was perfect. It was, yeah, I love that. It was
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. So know that you're inspiring us. And I'm going to do my exit. You are more than welcome to chime into it and add your 2 cents as I go through it, because I'm just grateful you came on. So thank you for always, James, for everything you do today and forever.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'm proud this podcast has given solutions and included cultural safety training, cultural first aid, and all of them to create a safer space for Indigenous people of color, those with a disability, and LGBTQ2 plus to speak. Thank you to authors Cheryl Ward, Chelsea Branch, and Alicia Fridkin of heretohelp.bc.ca of what is Indigenous cultural safety and why I should care about it as a resource. Their work and those cultural action tools I've said over 100 times in my podcast. So please support Indigenous work like that as part of your reconciliation work and settlers understanding. I'm just lucky enough to highlight and repeat them here. Internalized racism and lateral violence is another form of violence Indigenous and marginalized folks experience by the structure of racism imposed on these lands. Racialequitytools.org has tons of different resources, including what is internalized racism. So if you are a brown person, Asian, Indigenous, um, even women, like internalized sexism is a problem as well. And Donna Bevins has tons of resources at racialequitytools.org to help us all trying to unpack that so that we don't end up being our own oppressors to each other. Do's and don'ts for bystander intervention by American Friends Service Committee. There's so many resources out there, but this one in particular helps people. So someone like myself who would see that maybe a woman with a hijab being inappropriately harassed, how to de-escalate that situation. If you see or experience racism here in Alberta, you can go to acttoendracism.ca or text 587-507-3838, and they will bring you right to their website. Indigenous have been talking about our issues, sharing our traumas in reports, commissions, and public hearings, just so it can be regularly disregarded. No more. Honor our words, honor the treaties, listen to politicians and their policies and platforms. If they don't recognize the marginalized in their budget with Gender Equity Plus, if they're cutting violence prevention programs and services, Indigenous education, uterus health choices, gay straight alliances, lack of human rights for migrants, immigrants, folks with disabilities, Know that your vote to that party, that person, directly negatively impacts marginalized people. Demand they implement the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action, the recommendations of the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples, the multiple reports on child welfare reform, violence prevention, and now 231 calls to justice from the National Inquiry on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two-Spirit. Denying these reports is a form of abuse called gaslighting. Our people are experiencing extreme racism in the educational, justice, and health institutions with multiple reports that say the same thing. Demand change from election platforms and politicians. And if they don't understand colonialism, racism, privilege, and sexism, they literally have zero business running. This should be understood by all parties, local politicians, community organizations, sports clubs, etc. A really great article I said was Truth Before Truth, how non-Indigenous Canadians become allies. There are literally so many more articles as well now available. So there's really no excuses. If you're experiencing emotional distress after hearing anything we talked about and you're Indigenous, you want to talk, call the First Nation and Inuit Hope for Wellness helpline at 1-855-242-3310. It's toll free and open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you go to their website, hopeforwellness.ca, there's a text option as well. If more related to missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit, you can call 844-413-6649. It is also a national toll-free 24-hour crisis line to give support about relating to these issues. Now for non-Indigenous, there are distress center lines in your area and usually even a functioning 211. But if those are not available to you, you can call 833-456-4566. For Indigenous dealing with 60 Scoops issues, there's the 60 Scoop Indigenous Society of Alberta at ssisa.ca. And if you go to #survivor-driven, you can see that as well. For a lot of our LGBTQ2+, the Trevor Project and lifevoice.ca has tons of supports from an LGBT youth line to a trans lifeline, and for youth as well. Kids Help Phone 1-800-668-6868. Violence is my everyday reality. Every Indigenous generation has faced it. That's why I started this podcast, to speak freely without interruption, tone police, leadership shaming, gaslighting questions, as many people don't want to hear Indigenous opinion, but sure want to tell us theirs, even though they've controlled the narrative for years. This is a chance for us to tell our stories and give us the representation that we should be having anyway. Internal, external racism is an everyday reality for Indigenous people. I want to say thank you to my ancestors, my granny, my mom, of what strength looks like through your example. I want to thank my dad for teaching me to be strong and blunt. My stepmom for showing me what a proud culture is through her Austrian family and roots and teaching me to be a proud Calgarian. It is through her I'm a second generation proud Calgarian, but I highly recommend nobody identify as a native Calgarian unless you're Indigenous. Thank you to my husband, Darcy, for producing and editing the show. On top of being my husband, my childhood friend, and the father of our child, he has supported my journey down the red road and has witnessed decades of racism and sexism. And to our child, who we are blessed to learn from every day, we are so honored you chose us. You give me daily accountability to be a better and stronger person. My hope is my daughter, my family will be proud in the future of us discussing these present day issues. My Patreon account is Native Calgarian, where you can pledge and support. Thank you, previous donors, for showing your support. If you value listening or watching and you can afford to give, thank you. To those who cannot afford to give, I'd love to hear from you at nativeyyc@gmail.com, where you can send in your comments or questions. We also have a YouTube channel. You can subscribe, and you can go to nativecalgarian.com for the latest podcasts and pin posts. And I want to end with side eye to those Calgary rabbits. You're lucky I'm not your dish. My beautiful cousin would respond, or you'd be in my dish. Thank you for listening.
Is that it? Are we out? Or are we still on?